Hoi hoi, it's louisity again, and for this reading vlog, we are going to read The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. Hoorah! So, it's been a while. I've been wanting to read this one because if you've been watching videos in my channel, I already bought like the second book in the series during a Big Bad Wolf book sale, and I don't have this one yet. It took me a while for me to acquire it, and finally it is here. And finally, because of my Alphabet TBR game, I decided to read this for October 2025. So finally, I'm definitely excited. This is like, I think this is like African or West African mythology. I may be wrong as I read this, but it is written by a black author, Evan Winter, and it has dragons. So yeah, I want to read like a high fantasy every now and then, an epic fantasy, written by a person of color. I don't think I have read yet that is like a high or epic fantasy, like an adult fantasy by a person of color that really focuses on like the fantastical elements, as far as I know, because I've read like things sci-fi, but not like epic or high fantasy. But yes, well, I've been rambling, pardon me. I'm just really looking forward. I love the cover. It's my favorite color, brown, and yeah, he is kind of thick, but we're gonna pull through it because I'm looking forward to read this one, and I'm hoping that I would enjoy the narrative, and that I would be able to be immersed into this world and just really feel it. So, and like kind of like there won't be any like barriers what I'm talking about. But yeah, without further ado, I've rambled a lot. Let us begin reading this one, and I'm excited. Hoorah! So, I've read nearly 100 pages of The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, and I have to say that this is the epitome. Like at the beginning, it is action-packed. We get to see the prologue on how like the world was like introduced, on how it was claimed, with the Hedenis, or also known as the Savages, and how like the ancestors of like the characters that we're going to be meeting, and how it all came about is already action packed from the beginning. And I like that the format of this one is that for every like chapter, including the prologue, it is divided into like some sub chapters or sections. You would see like, for example, for the first chapter you get to see like a header that's kind of like divided into parts. Well, you gotta read this one to find out what I mean, and if you can acquire it physically, that would be better, or read it physically. That would be something that would make what I just said make sense. I like how it deals with like governance. We got to meet Tao, who's kind of like a commoner, and how there's like different like classes or castes or social like systems that are like going on with this one, that you would encounter, and it does tackle with that. The world building is like very intense. You can see how like there is a war, but like there's a brewing war, but it's not like going to be like in your face. Or some sort of development to it. And I like how it also talks about governance and like power, and kind of like how even that part where Aaron was like kind of trying to twist the story in order to like save the people, that kind of like made me think of it. And I'm just really excited about like Tao's journey, about like how he's just gonna roll in this story. I'm definitely looking forward to the narratives. There's just something about like the first 100 pages that's just captivating, and that I look forward to like what is going to happen next. The action scenes, the battles are vividly like depicted. Like give me more, give me more. It makes me want to go like, ooh, give me more, give me more. And it's very cinematic, just what I look for, especially for a fantasy novel. And this is like epic fantasy, but I'm like gripped and I'm sold to it. Also, like the love story, the romance between Zuri and Tao. I like how it was inserted, but it wasn't forced. Like the way that I read it, it wasn't like something that was awkward to read. It was I was like invested. I was like, I'm looking forward to what's gonna happen with their relationship, you know. And yeah, I like how it is like queendom is being mentioned here. What else can I say? I'm just excited. You know, I'm just so happy that I got to start with this one. And yeah, it also talks about like, you know, what it means to be honorable or what honor means, because we got to see about like Lekin, who's not really, there's like some discussions here whether he deserves like being kind of, you know, where he is when he didn't really like fight for the army. And it talks about also protection that could be perceived as cowardice. I'm definitely excited about how everything's gonna, you know, roll out, you know. It's gonna make you like think. It's definitely effective because, you know, you may see some things in a different parallel, but that's just the whole thing about like books. They need to unleash thoughts, emotions out of you for it to be effective. So I'm looking forward to read the succeeding parts, chapters, etc. So I'll catch you folks later. Whoa. Also, to add like on what I said about like it being cinematic, like I am not much of a fan of flashbacks, especially for like, you know, fantasy novels, unless they really make sense towards like the overall narrative. You know, it's for me like fantasy. Usually, it has to be like action packed, or there has to be some magic system that is vivid, or, you know, it's less about like circumstances and all that. And it is a tricky thing to like connect like circumstances to like the overall narrative or action or like mission of like a fantasy novel. But like in this case, like I didn't feel like I was bored when I was reading the flashbacks, especially like when we get to know like the family history of Tao, you know, where, you know, Tao's mother left them like and chose like somebody from the higher caste, I believe, from what I remember. Basically, Tao's mother left Aaron, and it is kind of like one of those scenes like in a TV series, like at least here in the Philippines, where, you know, you get to see like the spouse leaving like their family for somebody else. You know, it was vividly done. Like it was like, you know, clear. So I was like really, you know, impressed by that one, and that part like struck me because it was just so, you know, cleanly and vividly done. And yeah, and that's the good thing about them. You know, you got to appreciate parts. So yeah, we'll see about like the rest of them. Hopefully they will hold up. And again, I'll catch you folks later. Whoa. Here's a reading update of Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, and I'd have to say that we have a character here who died so sad, and now Tao is like building himself up for his revenge, you know. Get to see how like honor is being tested here, you know, being noble is being tested in duels, and like now we get to see, you know, Tao traveling from Karam to Kigambe to other cities in order to, you know, build his skill, to get, you know, to lift his status basically and exact his revenge towards like the nobles, you know, those people that are like in the higher caste. And I love how like in the duels, I'm typically like, okay, if they're just having all these like games, it could get a little boring or stale. But in this narrative, there was just something about it that, you know, that you would be excited for, that you would gravitate to. And I was just looking for it and was rooting for Tao here, the way that you make that is going to make you want to root for Tao, y'all. So and I was like able to vivid the scenes, and I was like nervous about like, wait a minute, is Tao gonna be winning his battles, or will we be in a surprise? How is he gonna win? And we get to see now his training and how he is developing his skills. So we get to see his growth as a warrior. Definitely excited to read what's next. So I'll catch folks later with another update. Whoa! Here's a reading update for Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, and I have to say that we get to see like Tao's journey as being a warrior. We get to see about like the sort of how the world was created. It does deal with a bit of faith, as well as the demons in Ishihogo, if I pronounce that correctly. And I'm just rooting for Zuri and Tao's like relationship. I'm definitely seething about what's going to happen next, and how it also mentions about like the gifted are only women, and like there are certain skills that only one can acquire, which also like there was a scene here where a character died, and it sparked that like anger, because because of Tao's experiences, like certain like emotions like anger were planted on him, and how Tao is determined to take revenge on like the nobles, on some of the nobles in relation to Aaron's death, his father, I should say. But like Jed, if I pronounce his name correctly, discussed a lot of things about like class, and also about like his sort of goal to have like another class. Like a lot of the people that he picked were like a mixture, or like cross nobles, if that's the correct term, while apparently like Tao is the only one who is like a lesser or like a common folk. And it's going to make you think about like what Jayed said, whether you would agree with him totally, or contemplate about it for a second or for a minute, or if you will totally disagree. And it's just really great when when stories get to sort of incorporate these like socio-political things, kind of like parallels to like what happens in society and all that stuff. And what else can I say? Yeah. And also you might even think about what Tao thinks about life. It doesn't matter where you were born, it's what you make out of it. And how kind of like in the beginning Jayed was a little bit idealistic, and then Tao's shocked about like certain things that gets revealed. And Jayed mentions here about like Tao knowing his place, which it's going to make you contemplate about like class and caste systems and all that stuff. And definitely am rooted about Zuri. She also discussed about like the process of being gifted, and I like the whole where they were like I think I forgot exactly the word, but basically they are like part of the higher class, and Zuri's like stop, so that was like, wow, powerful woman right there. I love to see that. I love to see women being strong. And also here's the thing though, they know that their common enemy is Hedeni, like the world that we are seeing here, but like they are so divided because of class. And speaking, sometimes it makes me think about like society, like how we may have like a common goal or a common thought, but the way that we, because of different like nuances and circumstances involved, it's kind of like we are dividing against each other. I don't know if you understand what I mean about that, but I love that this book like sort of tackled that. So yeah, I'm definitely excited. I think I have about 200 plus pages left, so I'll catch you folks later. Whoa. Here's another reading update of Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, and I've read about 400 plus pages of this one. And so far in the last pages, we got to see how they're kind of like succumbing to demons, and how like even Zuri has like her own like thing going on. She has like her own process in order to achieve what she desires, and kind of like those things. And we get to see a lot of these intense battles, and I was just like gripping, and I'm just seated about like what is going to happen. Like really looking forward for Scale Jayed to really win. Unfortunately, they did not, and there's something about like Jayad here that is kind of, there's something about him like that's just not, adding up. I don't know, just for me, but like we get to see the bonds of the swords, like brotherhood. We get to see like in terms of Tao, kind of really unleashing his rage. It's kind of like brewing out of him, being also with the help of the demons as well, and yeah, kind of like you get to see like Tao's like determination, kind of like how they do not align with like even some of the Sword Brothers as well as with Jayed, especially, and like that those last pages from the that I read before giving this update, I'm just like wondering like the bloodshed that's going to be happening. Like I'm definitely seeing about like what Tao's reactions are going to be. Now, for some reason, my camera app in my phone suddenly closed. I mean, technical issues, it is what it is, or they are what they are. But I was about to say, like, with this one, like with Rage of Dragons, I can now understand, like, in the last 100 plus pages that I read since, like, the last update that I gave, the meaning of how like in terms of the rage, now it makes sense. So I know that there were dragons that were mentioned like in earlier pages. We don't get to see them a lot here, but yeah, I also like the kind of how it tackles about vengeance as well as like faith, because there are like some spirituality things that are being tackled here, which is really amazing. And if you're somebody who is like faithful, with your faith or your creed, religion, your spirituality, you name it, it can make you contemplate about that one. Well, at least for myself, it made me contemplate about that one. So I believe that my next clip might be like my overall thoughts. Hopefully, hopefully I get to finish this book soon, and hopefully that I'll have like, an amazing reading experience overall, and that the next 100 plus pages or the last 100 plus pages will be fantastic. So I'll catch you folks later. Whoa. Now, before I go to bed, I just want to let you know that I finished reading Rage of Dragons, and I have to say that towards like the latter part, the war got more intense. There were like a lot more people that were sadly lost, and you get to see how Tao got stronger and how he kind of surrenders himself to the Ishihogo, and how like he got his power. I just found it honestly, I did kind of there was this part where they introduced a character, which I'm not sure if the placement was the best, but still I enjoy like reading the war scenes that were happening here, and kind of like we also get to see here about betrayal, and there were kind of like surprising turns here, like with the queen, and now even Tao being like part of the lesser, he becomes like the chosen one, and now that they have a mission to like kill the traitor. So yeah, that is something that we have to prepare whenever we're going to be beating Fires of Vengeance. So yeah, looking forward to that one. Looking forward to read Fires of Vengeance. Overall, with my reading experience about this, like I said, it tackles a lot about like there's a bit of faith. There's of course talk about peace, in a way of seeking justice, and I love how like the world was built. There wasn't really too much like magic in it, but definitely it is something like that's really like intense, in terms of like the war scenes and all the battle scenes. So that's what I liked about it. Something that I don't know, for some reason this epic, high fantasy is something that I really enjoyed. So I'm giving this like 4.5 out of 5 stars. Feel free to comment down below if this reading vlog motivated you to read this book, or if you've read this one and your overall thoughts about this one. And if you've made it this far, leave a taco emoji. So I hope you folks liked this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, click that subscribe button and hit that little bell icon somewhere down there to keep yourselves posted about my videos. I'll also put down links and handles of my social media accounts, so feel free to check me out and follow me there and support me there as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. Always be thankful and unleash the reader in you. Bye, y'all.